Okay, thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Oli live kuva strange 256 from wherever you catching us. Nkwaniriza nnyo nateera ku mukutu guno. Nkwegayiridde nkolera ekintu ekisooka o subscribing ku mukutu guno. After subscribing, make it a point to tap the notification bell. Akadaako kakuyamba nti whenever we are live, you're always notified that tuli live nobanga tosubwa kubanga ofuna amawulire nga gano. Lunaku olwaleero ate nkuletedde mukyala we yaliko mukyala w'omugenzi Jacob Olanya right now nga awangalira mu America. Omukyala ono ennaku zino abadde nga akola videos ng'ayogera ebintu ebimu abasinga betubadde tetumanyi, wabula olwaleero ate akomyewo n'amawulire amalala. Gwe nawe naatulaba nsaba olabe video eno ate nkwegayiridde nnyamba ogitambuze such that n'omulala asobola okuba nga amanya. Omukyalo nayogedde ebigambo byotagenda wulira ku radio, ebigambo byotajja wulira ku TV, wabula ng'ogenda bifuna ku mitimbagano nga gino. Era gwe atulaba nkwaniriza katutambule ffenna ffenna.
2 or 3 more minutes, maybe less. Come, you're welcome. I know it's late and odd hour for everyone. People in Uganda sleeping, some parts of the world not awake yet, some busy coming off work. It's 4 p.m., 4:31 p.m. today in the US and on the West Coast. Welcome. I'd like to chat with us a bit about what happened today at the European Union Parliament. Welcome, Rachel. You're the first. Thank you for coming. Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Lady. Today is February the 23rd. The 23rd of February 2026. Hello Juliet, you're welcome. Thank you all for joining me today. I'd like to discuss what transpired in the EU Parliament today and a few more alerts and things like that from Uganda. I've been down with a bit of a cold, but I'm back now and hoping to get back in the swing of things with time. So, according to the plans as they unveiled today, His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu was at the European Union Parliament today. Among the speakers was him, obviously the members of Parliament concerned that were invited to speak. They also invited the representative of the Ugandan government, which is Ambassador Marjam Black, who represents Uganda in Belgium, Luxembourg, and the European Union. She obviously declined to appear because through Honorable Minister Okello Oryem of Foreign Affairs, the government of Uganda was not represented. You know, as much as they bully things or bully people at home, they feel like they can do the same on this international platform. I don't think it goes well as an indicator for somebody who means well, or a party or whoever, an organization that means well, to say no or turn down the opportunity to explain themselves. This was, if anything, the platform where the Ugandan government can come and explain how they're much loved by Ugandans, how they didn't do what is said to be done, how whatever happened was not their fault, or how, you know, like you go to court. The reason why you go to court is to say or speak on your behalf and give your side of the story so that people can understand what truly transpired between you and the other party that is inviting you to explain. But anyways, so with insistence from the Uganda government, Marjam Black did not appear to be at the EU Parliament, as was requested, to testify or give an account on the side of the Ugandan government. I'm not surprised. Many of us are not surprised, because Museveni rules with an iron fist. He believes in bulldozing things, not dialogue, not good faith, not well-intended anything for Ugandans. So I knew that this was likely going to be the outcome, that they wouldn't show up, because they really have nothing to say, right? So the speakers were the EU Parliament, our President, His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. We also had Mr. John Johnson, EU External Action of the East Africa and the Horn of Africa. We had our own Dr. Sarah Birete. She did a wonderful job. And we also had a slot where the AU or COMESA or IGAD were to attend. However, they turned down appearances because they could not defend Museveni, or could not give an accurate account. As you remember, the AU already congratulated Museveni for becoming the president of Uganda elect at this time, despite the fact that everything that they saw or heard was contrary. They came out and said, well, Museveni, congratulations, you're the legitimate president of Uganda. But as you know, with things unfolding and the delay of the rest of the world congratulating Museveni, everybody who even stood for him in the beginning is now staying away, because Museveni is like a disease that if you contract or if you look like you have, you can't be party to several, amongst other people. So IGAD, COMESA, AU were not represented because they don't want to be associated with Museveni anymore as organizations that do their own, exist on their own accord. So amongst other things, Dr. Sarah Birete, you gave a beautiful account of your experience. His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, you did a fantastic, phenomenal job. You were calm, you explained what was necessary, you were straight to the point, you used the right amount of time. You know, we are so proud of you, even more every day as you do what you do to give Uganda the hope that we need, you know, for a change, possible change into a new government that is for the people and serving the people. We are thankful for your presentation today. We felt all covered. You explained what happened. You also gave them what they could do to help rectify or give Ugandans freedom and human rights freedoms from the fangs of the Museveni and the people and whatever they did. So that was wonderful. The reason why Sarah Birete was so important to speak at this event is because she experienced firsthand what happened. And she gave an account. And so Sarah Birete's account does help express the fact that no one is safe in Uganda. And it doesn't matter whether you have an office, you hold a high office, or whatever the case might be, that you are no exception. But the fact that she was an observer, I don't know if you know her background, that Dr. Sarah Birete is one of the executives or the ED of Uganda Civic Center for Constitutional Governance. She is also in charge of steering global networks for domestic election monitoring and CCG. So Dr. Sarah Birete is not only poised as a Ugandan to give an account of what happened, but she is the eyes and ears of the rest of the world in documenting how things, you know, unfolded or how things happened during the election period. She witnessed not just physically, but as intended before the elections, what should have transpired, the training that should have been given to people, the voter registers that should have been, the numbers of people who had registered to vote. She then would be able to compare what the results were, what the numbers are, and truly what the outcome should have been. As you all know, Museveni had his doctored results. already before Uganda even went to the polls. So what they truly did was to invert Chagulanyi results, give them to Museveni, the dictator, and then have Museveni's results given to Bobi Wine. So because Sarah is a pivotal factor in the election, because she has background knowledge of the numbers, okay, and how things would have had to happen for an effective and fair election to occur. Museveni decided that it would be better to take her out than to leave her to be free and speak out while the elections were going on. So a blessing in disguise. It's sad what happened to her, but in any case, she is the actual experience that needs to be told to, or testimony to be given to the EU Parliament. So thank you so much, Dr. Sarah Birete. Among the outcomes of the election is of the EU Parliament involvement today with the matters that affect Uganda is they are requesting the Magnitsky Human Rights Act of Accountability that was enacted in 2016. This is now affecting, it's now a blanket network for the rest of the world. It's no longer only about certain parts of the world. Even though the Magnitsky Act came from Russia, and a lawyer who was called, let me get you his name. It was enacted on behalf of Sergio Magnitsky, who was a tax lawyer in Russia, who ended up being killed in a Russian prison in Moscow. So because of what happened and how effective this law happened to be useful for the purpose of catching or restraining perpetrators from continuing to perform atrocities, it has been adopted globally. So the Magnitsky Act is now a global act or law that affects accountability of gross human rights all over the world. So let's say for Ugandans, obviously the people working for Museveni, the policemen, the military people, you know, the SFCs, people in government like Honorable Minister Okello Oryem, who comes out and very boastfully, big-chested says, well, we're not going to take this or that. We're going to incriminate Bobi Wine. We're going to label him a terrorist. We're going to charge him with treason. You know, all of the people who are caught on video beating or torturing a lot of the National Unity Platform supporters, people beating people, even judges who made judgment wrongfully on, let's say, the prisoners, political prisoners, even those who, you know, it could be as simple as a guard that is sent to go and perform a certain atrocity. So this makes it individualized. This is not just about a whole network to say the Ugandan president is the only one that's going to be affected by this. No, it is individualized. So if you're in the police, armed forces, SFC, parliament, even a teacher at school, any way that you affect human rights negatively, you will be punished as an individual. So an example is Mr. Byabakama. I don't know if he's a doctor or what. Byabakama, the Electoral Commission executive, recently went to apply for a visa, to try to get a U.S. visa, and he couldn't get one. So one of the issues that they're going to strike is visa bans on a lot of these people. They're also not going to have access to their assets that are abroad. There will be a lot of asset freezes. So if you have if they have, you know, they hide their assets, their houses they buy abroad, Swiss banks where they put all their money, they have some money stashed away in the U.S. And it doesn't matter really what area of the rest of the world where those assets could be. In fact, it will affect people like your spouse. If your children are known, also affects them. Anybody that is associated with that person or that individual who is committing such atrocities or human rights violations. So I know that maybe about 6 or 10 years ago, somebody like Kaihura was sanctioned individually. He was targeted, I believe, after one of the elections where 2010 or something like that, the Boda guys were just harassing people, killing people. Dr. Besigye was, you know, here and there with his campaigns. Around that time, those sanctions were targeted to Kaihura. And these sanctions are not limited to a period of time. So it is timeless, even if it's contested to say people change and all that. People like Anite Among, Speaker of Parliament, she has been sanctioned from the Mabati incident that was supposed to be sent to Karamoja. They swindled those and they misappropriated them. They took them personally and owned them. Anita Among can no longer travel to the Western world, you know, to the US. Obviously she can't go to Europe or some parts of Asia, you know, anywhere where the treaties apply. They can't freely move around. She had assets in the Western world, lots of them. She can no longer access those. Those are frozen. And there's no telling how long those freezes will take place or stay on hold. So a very long time for a fact. Some people have never been able to recover those assets, and it's been 20, 15, 30 years. She bragged about only needing a visa to Bukedia, but you know how that goes. Now that Museveni is changing towards her, possibly Mao coming in as speaker, you know for a fact that it's time to throw her like a piece of tissue. So those are the things that happen with the Magnitsky. I'm going to read some of those. So they're going to be imposed visa bans, targeted economic sanctions, blocking assets, prohibiting transactions in foreign countries. That can be individuals or entities. So targeting individuals like Muhoozi Kainerugaba, his father, you know, I can see this going on and on and on and on to police head executives who say things that are just ridiculous. Judges like Nzeja, this new one who was sworn in Museveni's bush or you know, in Museveni's home. He's actually a relative of Museveni. You can see how convenient that is. So with the rulings and he recently came out and said we can't speak about judges on social media, God forbid. But if he's not doing the right thing, he's obviously, you know, there's an avenue to discuss him there. The fact that he's intimidating social media or journalists or anybody that can speak, that is violating a human right. So people like Nzeja, I can foresee him being on that list, even if he hasn't acted very much just yet. But I understand Okeloriem, Minister Okeloriem has a lot of videos and certain, which I'll go into that later, but he has a lot to present to Nzeja about how they can possibly target His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu and label him a treasonous criminal, severe treasonous criminal against the government of Uganda. Meaning that he then becomes a wanted individual, and they'll have Interpol chase him and look for him everywhere that he goes. But that's besides the point. Hopefully these that have taken place today in the European Union Parliament will be a platform for things to change, but more so to get all those individuals that are acting that way to either refrain or move away if they're not willing to. So some of the sightings are they're also, so they will be attacking, they will be setting these visa bans and all of the other targeted accountability requirements on individuals. I talked about companies or entities, significantly corrupt individuals. So I forgot to mention that. You talk about things where, like the NSSF, for example, you remember how much money just got lost and there was no follow-up, there was nothing like that. That is a reason also for the Magnitsky Act to be applied onto an individual for high corruption rates. And you talk about corruption, that is the whole government of Museveni, basically. So that's another way they're going to clamp down on these people. And then severe human rights abuses. Remember, the act of the Magnitsky Act came about a prisoner who was held in Moscow and killed in prison. So it really is an asset when it comes to what the human rights stakes are in Uganda. So hopefully, you know, I heard the speaker say that they're going to take action. They're going to work on this. They're going to pay attention. You know, like the rest of the world is paying attention. I'm sure this is definitely going to come down the pipeline pretty soon. The U.S. hasn't come in. You know, these actions or these global actions, when they do take place, they spread like wildfire, okay? If it's taken in the European Parliament, it will apply the rest of the world. So this, even if it looks like it just happened here, I am positive that this is going to spread like wildfire. And so other parts of the world are going to jump on and just set those bans in place, because there's no need for them to do research or whatever different times and spend a lot of money trying to gather information when it is in the central place. But that's how the Western world has worked so far. So it's a really good thing. So there will be asset freezes and prohibition of conducting transactions. So even if they may try to disguise themselves as different people, you know, when people travel now and they're getting into eye prints, where they'll use your pupil to save your ID. So far, we're using fingerprints. So anywhere, even if they try to use another person's identity, their fingerprints will never allow them to successfully exist in that way. They can't get through because they have a history already of fingerprints that only match theirs. So if they attempted to do something else about, you know, trying to get a different identity to come out or whatever, they'll get caught. And so once they have this watch on them, it is also it's a job for the rest, everybody in charge, to pay attention and report as necessary. So, you know, if Anita Among, for example, shows up to the United States, shows up to my door, or shows up in a community that I know her, it is easy to report. And it's easily trackable. So no matter what they do, when these are set in place, it's done. Okay? So the global Magnitsky Act was adopted by countries like Canada, the UK, EU, United States, Australia. So basically most of the Western world. And it's for people who have acted against human rights. And so they have to give accountability. Not appearing today at the EU Parliament by the Ugandan government shows that there is a lot more that they're hiding. Also validates the fact that, you know, what they're probably being questioned about actually does exist and has happened. You know, I'll give an example. When you go to court, for example, in the United States, I can speak for that. There's something called judgment, default judgment. Default judgment means when you go into court, let's say I go and report a case, and so is invited and served. The reason why this hearing does exist is so that everybody explains themselves. And, you know, it leaves the EU to decide what happens where, okay? Or what happened. Or maybe to say, well, what about Museveni said this, how come this, and you know, we didn't go to Saudi Arabita's house, or we didn't really attack Bobi Wine, or we are not holding on to Bobi Wine's house, or whatever. But because these people are a criminal mind, they're a gangster type of government, they feel like, and Muhoozi stupidly said something about, you know, he's going to send SFCs, or he's going to give them a lot of gold and all that stuff. You know, this is not the stage where you do stuff like that. So no matter what he tries to do, that will definitely not fly. I have a few other files I want to talk about. We're going back to Uganda now, and things that are going on or have gone on. So Museveni's government is having a lot of financial restraints right now. They're struggling financially. Every possible way that he's gotten monies have been blocked. I know that the Western world has given him a lot of money over time. They have, through funds, through like the IMF, International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, The U.S., obviously, with the coming of President Trump, one of the things they slashed was, funding to other countries, U.S. aids that have been cut. So he's struggling a lot in his government and blames His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, rightfully so, because, with everything that he does, why should anybody give Museveni any more money? Why would any other government foster a relationship with a government that's intended or intentionally making sure that they exert human rights violations to their own people? Okay, so Kaseja, the Minister of Finance, has advised Museveni to possibly reduce the number of members of ministers, because apparently he has so many people, over 100 ministers in government, and Kaseja says, that is a way of trying to calm down or to curb expenses so that he can have enough money to run the government. So you're going to see different departments suffering with payroll or paying staff because they don't have the money to do so. And the government truly does not have the money to do so. For a long time, Museveni had access to funds because, being that he had hoodwinked the Western world about being the peacemaker in the region, all the wars in Somalia, in the Central Africa, in the East, in Congo, nobody knew that Museveni was actually the perpetrator of those wars. And so even the EU today said they want to maintain relationships with Museveni because he's a peacekeeper in the region. That is actually false, because when we talk about ADF, when we talk about M23, those are all Museveni's armies or rebel groups. So, like in the past, what he did in Luwero and northern Uganda, where he came as a rebel and then also came as the saving grace, the UPDF, he does the same in Congo, and he has done the same with the parts of the world, Somalia, Central Africa, Congo. M23 is Museveni's army. And the ADF is Museveni's army. So when other countries think he's keeping peace, he truly isn't. He just is playing an act so that he continues to get funds. Okay, so he gets money to say that he's keeping peace in those regions, but he truly is not. So they're going to try to devalue the Ugandan currency by producing a lot of money and putting it in circulation. Now, this money is not going to be, they're going to be actual Ugandan notes, but they will have the same serial number, meaning that when this money comes into circulation, it'll be useful for traders here and there to buy assets, to buy this and that. However, some of that money cannot be accepted by the banks. So what they're trying to do is to look like the economy is doing well, but eventually, who borrows the most, all right? It's the wealthy Ugandans, the ones who are well-to-do. These are the people Museveni is trying to eliminate or do away with, which means once that money goes into circulation and they start to buy this or that or the other, eventually they will get caught in the web of using fake currency. That money is also going to devalue the Ugandan currency on the foreign exchange, because it will be not useful or not as valued as the usual Ugandan currency. Okay? Banks are also being asked by Museveni. These are all things that he's doing to stifle the economic growth of Uganda, because remember, he has promised and he swears that Ugandans now hate him, and he has known, so he's going to make sure that Ugandans will suffer. So that is something that be watchful for. If you see a lot of new currencies and stuff, try to use monies from your bank. You withdraw and use what you've got instead of getting money from other agencies or other people, large chunks of money, because eventually you're going to get stuck with it and possibly charged with money laundering or using fake money. The next thing I want to talk about is Museveni's next move with the Muslim community. He is happy that Lent and Ramadan are occurring at the same time. in essence, he feels like he's now able to control the two, and he's trying to use a method that the Nigerian president, he says the Nigerian president has successfully stayed in power because he has staged religious wars amongst the two governments, and it's caused them to focus on the wars so that they leave him alone. Okay, many of you can tell the gentleman is about maybe 90s or that old. Last time he went to Turkey and fell because of his seniority, because he's old. Okay, so he's going to pour a lot of millions into the Muslim clerics or the Muslim community to help them change their mindset, because he believes that, you know, the Muslims are a powerful force, not just as individuals, but as families, because Muslims are mostly extended. You know, there's not just Mr. and Mrs. There's Mr. and a few Mrs. here and there. So he feels like that a community like that can grow very fast and build strongholds to get him out of office. Not only that, the Muslims are concentrated in the central region. So anything that looks like an organization or an organized group, Museveni wants to target. And my video went away a little bit there. So he's set up to cause conflict between the Muslims and the Christians, to the extent that he's going to have Christians fight Muslims with their Quran and whatever they believe in, and then have Muslims fight Christians with their beliefs, calling them names or making them, you know, look like they're both enemies. But I hope we don't fall prey to that, because we are stronger together, we are powerful together, and we belong together. So Christians, Muslims, or whatever religion you are, actually, you know, we are stronger together as a force, as human beings, as Ugandans, than would be as Muslims or as Catholics or as Christians. So let's just look for those signs and stay focused and stay with what's right, do what's right, and not fight one another. The next thing is about Magere. Muhoozi has asked, Magere is Honorable His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu's home. To date, that home is being occupied by soldiers. Museveni's army, SFC's, and the police still occupy Kyagulanyi Ssentamu's home to date. Muhoozi has asked them to dig a tunnel underneath the home and see if there is an escape route, because he cannot believe that on the day that his home was raided, that His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu was able to exit the home. And he wonders how that happened, because there's no soldier or nobody who was able to explain how that even came about. They have exhausted every tool on earth that they can use over on land to try to sense how that even happened. They've used everything. They've used AI. They've used whatever tool they can at their disposal to try to figure out His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu's exit route, but they've failed. This goes to show you that Museveni's government really has lost intelligence. They have the worst intelligence possible, if they have any, because how does a human being and their whole family leave a country without you knowing when or how? I mean, the night of the escape, His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu was in the home. You know, that just goes to show you how much our people in the military, the Ugandans in the police and the military, truly believe in doing the right thing. The fact that he was able to get out there scot-free, get away from the fangs of Muhoozi, is a big sign. And I have faith in our military. I have faith in our police department. I have faith in our Ugandan people for doing the right thing. So even if they try or want to do whatever they feel like they're going to do to exert force to try to get His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, I think that ship has sailed. And I wish they would realize that they've lost that chance if they had any. Okay, so Muhoozi wants the whole neighborhood surveyed. You know, they're still abducting people from the neighborhood, trying to find any signs of where His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu is. But I want to say this, that even if they preoccupy that home, they're keeping it busy or destroying it, Muhoozi has said that that home order of shoot to kill upon sight of Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. So with that, they've exhausted every possibility, and now they think killing him or taking him out is the only way to deal with this. All friendly leaders around the region have asked Museveni to just give up on this thing. They've asked him to just let go, you know, leave the guy, let him come home, let him be, let him exist. But they've refused because he feels like he's only bait. Museveni feels like he's only bait to try to coerce Kyagulanyi to even speak to him or negotiate with him, is to maintain hostage of his home. So he thinks at some point that the only reason that Kyagulanyi can ever come to the table to negotiate or talk to him is if he maintains grip of his home. The other reason also that Museveni hasn't released political prisoners is because he feels like that's another bargaining chip for him, because he thinks if he releases them now, then he'll have no reason to try to talk to Bobi Wine or convince him to let go of being on the run or give up his run or his bid for his presidency and try to get him to work with him. But we can assure you, Museveni, that that's not going to happen. There's no negotiation. It's not a level playing field. And Kyagulanyi is not a criminal. And he doesn't have to apologize to you because he did nothing wrong. In essence, you are in the wrong because you stole his win. You stole the election. You stole the win of His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. So with that said, there's no room for negotiation. We can't report to the courts in Uganda because you own the courts of Uganda. We can't talk to civil societies because they're not existent. You have closed every civil society available in Uganda. Recently, we saw you with Father, His Highness. You dragged him into State House to come and visit with you. That necessarily doesn't mean that you have a relationship where the church doesn't listen to you. You have control of the church also. That is why when the pastors, or these pastors like the Bujingos, when they speak for you. They are partisan. So forget about being a religious avenue for us to even try to discuss this. When you come to, you know, I talked about the courts, obviously not. Religious councils, no. Our cultural leaders are even worse. They're all compromised. We don't even see the Kawaka anymore. We don't see any of the cultural leaders speaking up, you know. The only person that has attempted to speak up, you've always shut down. So we don't have any cultural leaders to go to. We don't have any religious leaders to go to. We don't have a judicial system that works. We don't have a civil society to go to. Your Mrs. Wangadia has come out many times and said, well, I think those new people inflict torture on themselves. You know, how ridiculous is that? So the reason why we run out here is because you're useless. Every system is compromised. The media is controlled by you. In fact, I understand you banned the media from showing the EU Parliament's session today. But we're not surprised. We're going to continue working hard. We're going to make sure we achieve what we started. And with the help of the rest of the world and His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, I know that we're heading for the best every day. Okay? I'm going to speak about fires again. Museveni thrives on fires. You know, he has burned several schools. He burnt Bulange and Mengo when he first came as refugees, because that's where the refugees' records were kept. That place got burned, not by accident, but intentionally and purposefully by Museveni's government. Next place that was burned was Makerere University. This was around the time where his wife became the Minister of Education. Obviously, so that she can create documents and delete other documents. A lot of fake degrees were generated, untraceable. For example, that one of the lady who, Bamuturachi, you know, and a whole bunch of all of them. Winnie Byanyuma's others, certificates and education paperwork was also engineered. So they burned Makerere, the unit where the records are kept, so that there's no trace for anyone, whether you were legitimately there or not. So that means their fake certificates will thrive without actually coming from Makerere. So there will be fires in places like Makindye, Makerere, Nansana, Balagala, Kawempe, Kisubi, Mengo, Owino, Chiseka, and several different places. But when you see those are all Museveni's arrangements. Fires are government policy, okay? No fires no fire outbreak is by accident in Uganda. The recent burn on the Kisenyi area, behind National Unity Platform, was set ablaze because they want to take over that land and use it for themselves, but more so to get the people out of the city, out of the capital. The ghetto youths, he wants them out of there. So when you see those fires, they are not by mistake, they're not accidents. They're truly meant to have, they're government policy executed by Museveni. Recently, there was supposed to be a fire that we talked about, and they didn't do it after that. But they were supposed to, they'd already had a group of people who were in Nakivubo in Ham Stadium, and were supposed to come out and do this. When we talked about it, they regrouped, they postponed it, but it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. They're trying to set a curfew all over the country. In fact, Salim Saleh brags about a curfew that they've already set in the north and some part of the east. He says, in Acholi, that region, you can't find people just wandering around after 11 o'clock. So they're trying to implement that within the city of Kampala. Okay. With those fires going in place, excuse me, I just came over a cold. So with those fires taking place, when actually any of them happens, we're going to see a loss of 3 people in government, like he normally does, to try to divert attention. But, when you see fires, you know that they're coming from who? Museveni. The other thing is moneylenders have been stalked. You know that moneylenders are Rwandese. This is a way of these people circulating or getting their money that they've stored at home for so long back in circulation. One time somebody shared a video where Salim Saleh has a storage, like a stadium full of cash money in bags. Those are the monies that they give Rwandese when they first get into the country, and they distribute them to go into the villages and local areas, and then they control and spy into the community. So when, let's say you need money to start a business or whatever, or buy produce, they will give you the money, but they'll take all this information from you and use that information to report to the Rwandese communities, the higher ups, to say, oh, John or Susan, so and so, they have this much land, they have their 20 children, their father is still alive, and the heir is going to be Esther, or whatever the case may be. So these money lenders are truly spies to feed information to where it needs to go. Okay, so it doesn't mean that they're giving you money for the good of you, because what they're trying to do is hoping that you're not able to pay that money, so that they can take your land or whatever asset you have with them that they'll use as collateral. So be mindful of that. I wish we don't need those monies. I wish when you identify these Rwandese people, you find a way to deal with them so that you are not tied to them at all, because eventually you will hear about your family members dwindling or dying or whatever the case might be. They're trying to make sure people who are successful in farming lose their farms, or lose their produce, or lose their animals, or lose whatever the case might be. So in essence, they'll be the ones giving you the feeds, they'll be the ones giving you the mulches or whatever you add to your soil, eventually destroying what you're expecting to reap from your garden. So be mindful of that. We're moving on to Okello-Oryem. This one is a big one. As you've noticed, Okello-Oryem has been very vocal in the media lately. Since the European Union invited Marjan Black to come and testify at the EU Parliament, One of the things he has decided to do was to stop Mariam from appearing. Meanwhile, Mariam has been is also a permanent representative of Uganda at the ICC. Permanent. I'm talking since whatever time she was appointed. 23 years ago, this woman has been the representative at the EU Parliament, at ICC, which means all of our cries that were being sent to ICC were completely disregarded or thwarted by her. So Muhoozi has ordered Okello Oryem to open a crime on His Excellency Bobi Wine. As I mentioned, his house has been destroyed beyond repair. So what they want to do is that they capture Bobi Wine and designate his home a crime scene because he lives there and because they've stuffed a lot of more than anything with Besigye. In fact, Lukwago is the one representing Besigye, and yet Besigye, who is the president of FDC, is... Hello. Hi. To open a treason crime on His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. Because Bobi Wine's home has been tremendously damaged beyond repair, they are almost embarrassed to hand it to him that way. And obviously, because we're all going to see the state of the home, including the diggings they've done around it, but not to worry, because they say in the Bible that there was two places during the birth of Jesus that are memorable, that are remarkable. One of them was the hotel where Mary and Joseph tried to go to get a place to sleep. So hopefully Mary would give birth to baby Jesus there. And that place, they were denied access. But the other place that is very memorable is the kraal, or the where they kept animals, where the animal keeper welcomed Joseph and Mary and said, "You're welcome. You know, it's not the best, but if you can use it, feel free to use it." To this day, the hotel does not exist. Nobody knows what happened where. I think they've built other things on it. But the kraal where Jesus was born is still a memorable place and a tourist location to date. So, in as much as they're doing whatever they're doing with that home in Magere, His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu's home, I have no doubt whatsoever that that home for us is going to remain a historic location. Because looking at people like Nelson Mandela, the place where he was imprisoned for 26 years, till today, that island is still a tourist location, while prominent buildings or locations where people had lavish lifestyle cannot be found. So Museveni, whatever you do with that home is up to you, but that home forever in our hearts will remain a place, a special place, because His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu once stepped foot in there. So anyways, with that, Okello Oryem, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, has been tasked by Muhoozi to find a way to charge His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu with a severe crime. Reason being that his testimony at the Geneva Summit and the testimony today, February 23rd, 2026, at the EU Parliament, are considered to be treasonous and are equivalent to having him be a wanted individual. That means that once Nzeja, who is their attorney, who is their Chief Justice, concludes the crime or pins the crime on His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, at that point they will have Interpol look for him or try to catch him. To this day, Museveni doesn't know exactly where Bobi Wine is. And that just goes to show you how the intelligence services that they have or rely on are completely useless. You know, for a government to exist like Museveni with a lot of holes where we do get security alerts and we get information more than he can gather or gain, how does he explain the family of His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu getting out of the country, if they did? Or how does His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu exist in Uganda under their nose and they can't find him? So with those said, they're trying to bring him as a criminal. Remember that their attempt to crush NUP or completely have no existence of NUP as a political party or enclose their offices, they want to start with the head. So they believe that if they can stifle His Excellency Kyagulanyi from existing freely, then they've partially owned or they've partially trimmed the problem. But obviously their plans are theirs and ours are ours, and ours are working quite fast. Okay, so they want to charge him with treason. They also want to close all NUP offices and headquarters everywhere in Uganda with efforts like these. So once they charge Kyagulanyi with severe treasonous crimes, his offices will no longer exist. The political party no longer exists. That means anything NUP is no longer existence. And also, the political prisoners that are currently being held will also suffer the trickle effect of that judgment. So while they plan to do this, we're hoping that things can move faster and get ahead of them before they can enact or execute whatever they think they can try to do. Okay? In Muhoozi's mind, he wants Mpuga's party, I think it's called PFF or PPF or something like that. He wants Mpuga's party to replace NUP. As you know, Mpuga was the vice, I believe it was like a vice president to NUP in the beginning. And so when His Excellency found out Mpuga's position as being a mole or a spy from the NRM or Museveni's government, he was sent away, or he was demoted from the party, or sent away from the party. So as we see that a lot of the Mpuga group, Mpuga and the other gentleman, going to pretend to be rescuing new political prisoners who are in prison right now, don't be surprised by the fact that they are trying to coerce them to join the NRM. In fact, something more dangerous that they're doing, and if you do have relatives or friends who are political prisoners in prison, Mpuga and the group are going in to see these political prisoners and documenting or writing. You know, when you are an attorney for somebody or a lawyer for someone, you're supposed to present inquiries. You're supposed to present discoveries. You're supposed to present documents that plead for your client. In this case, Mpuga and their group, they are going in and asking these people to give testimony or take testimony in form of letters from the political prisoners. These statements that are being made are going to be used later on by Museveni to try to legitimize his government. So anybody who knows some political prisoners that are in prison who are being visited by Mpuga's group, please let them take heed from giving testimony or even agreeing to some of the things that the Mpuga people are trying to let them agree on, because all those are going to try to be used by Museveni so that he can show to the world that those new people are truly terrorists in Uganda. Because in exchange for trying to get them freed, they are going to agree to certain things, but those things are going to hold them for good and will legitimize the fact that Museveni says NUP as a party and all of its people are terrorists in Uganda. So they should not accept to give any testimonies or have these lawyers come and write documents about them that they said so, because those are being compiled very carefully so that they can use them against those people in the near future. Okay? All meetings are being recorded with the promise of giving them freedom. All what those new prisoners are talking to these Mpugas about, especially in light of agreeing to certain terms in exchange for a release, is just to get them to give testimony that eventually will be used by them. You see, the reason why Museveni and his people refuse to testify or have Mariam Black go and be questioned by the European Union or answer questions at the European Union is because they're not prepared. They don't have anything to present. But but now they're cooking things, and eventually they'll pour them into the media to look into the media and into organizations like the EU and all of them to try, and through their lobbyists like Mariam Black, who also works for the ICC as a permanent representative, to try to coerce and make things look normal in Uganda, to try to portray Museveni as a legitimate president, to also try to portray Museveni as a good leader, and that what his forces are doing with regard to political prisoners was the right thing to do. So be careful with that, and inform the prisoners wherever they are not to be coerced by the Mpuga group, because it doesn't end well for them. So apparently there's somebody new who's called Bosco in Kampala, who's owning all of Museveni is a moving proxy of their business ownerships to him. This is somebody who I understand is now owning all of Salim Saleh's businesses in Kampala, all of his arcades and all of that. He's the proxy of Salim Saleh. In fact, if you have seen Muhoozi in town recently, he has come out to tour his constructions in the trench of Chisenyi, where recently there was a flood or something like that. He came out to tour those buildings. Anytime you hear of a Bosco, a wealthy man in Chisenyi, is the new proxy of Salim Saleh. More robberies are going to happen. People who are wealthy, Ugandans, will lose businesses courtesy of this new person who has come up. All arcades and plazas are from Museveni's family, and they don't pay for water or electricity bills, but yet Ugandans pay heavily with the maximum amount of load shedding you can imagine. I mean, they have lights today, not tomorrow, not in the afternoon, not in the morning. You know, all of that happens. But in these arcades, these people don't pay electricity, they don't pay water, because they are the Museveni people. So in the unfairness of every other circumstance, add these two items, because it only gets worse and it doesn't get better for Ugandans. Until we fight hard and eliminate these people, we have no freedom or will not see peace for a long time. Okay? In a meeting where so Okello Oryem, as had been ordered by Muhoozi, has submitted over 187 videos to the Museveni family, including campaign videos, all of Chagulanyi's statements and speeches in Uganda and abroad. All of them have been ordered to implicate Chagulanyi Sentamu in a disastrous treason charge. The Geneva speech has been considered criminalized for misrepresenting Uganda and requesting sanctions against active government officials. Hence, they're calling him a treasonous person, because he's trying to collapse the government. But get this, the reason why I say Besigye is a hoax is because today was when they proposed to put a prayer for Dr. Besigye. I have nothing against Dr. Besigye, but he coincides with actual opposition and actual reality. Why is it that Dr. Kiza Besigye, who was arrested in Kenya, apparently surveying aircrafts and military equipment to come and overthrow the government of Museveni, why is Kiza Besigye held in prison? Not another party member. A boy Amriat came up the other day, you know, accusing Bobi Wine of being on the run for no good reason. But of all FDC people, okay, all FDC supporters, you have not heard of anybody else being arrested or being tortured or being held in prison. You know, Dr. Lina Zadriga is still in prison. The deputy prime minister, the deputy president of Kampala is still in prison. Our lady deputy from Western Uganda just got released recently. All of the new political prisoners that have been taken through this period, before the elections, after elections, Eddie Mutwe is still in prison. Eddie Mutwe has never had even a knife on him. But Besigye, who they say went to Kenya to try to purchase aircrafts, ammunition, to come and overthrow the government of Uganda, is in prison. Why isn't Besigye's deputy in prison? I don't believe if somebody is that dangerous, he's doing it alone, okay? There is no other FDC person who has been arrested and detained, who has been tortured like we have seen anything that has happened to new political prisoners. This goes to show, it gives me doubt in my heart, the validity of Besigye as an opposition. I don't like the fact that he's being held in prison, but that does not necessarily define the fact that he's a true opposition. Now, I don't want to go into this and beat this too much, but you get my point. Where does he fit in the shoes of a true opposition in Uganda? Those are my doubts, but they may just be mine, okay? So anyways, in a meeting, Museveni, Karugire, Chiriowa Chiwanuka, Rugunda, Mbabazi. Now, if you do remember, Amama Mbabazi once ran in the opposition. Amama Mbabazi right now and since then was free and has always been free. But imagine His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu has not been free before elections, after elections, and even when Museveni gives himself a win, Kyagulanyi still can't have peace in his own home. So it just, John, I agree with you, John, because he says this also baffles him. I don't understand that. Why is the prayer scheduled to be today and it's also cancelled? And Mrs. Winnie Byanyima, who works next door to ICC, in fact, if Besigye had ever been true, what has happened to His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu appearing, for example, at the European Union, could have happened with Besigye a long time ago. When he first ran in 2016 or 2020 or 2021, whatever the case might be, those times where there was supposed, you know, hijacking of Besigye or doing this or that, all those times, that man could have had it worse than His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. It goes to show you that the prayer that was put on today was possibly to try to divert attention from the European Union testimony today of Dr. Sarah Birete and His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. I strongly believe it was a diversion act, but I could be wrong. I really do not understand why those two events would have to happen on the same day. And then all of the ruckus that happened, that they didn't allow it to happen, blah, blah, blah. Okay? It seems to me like a diversion. I could be wrong. I know Besigye has touched so many hearts, but in the art of war, okay, I read that book and I don't believe that truly, with all the circumstances surrounding Dr. Besigye and his wife being in such a high position, that in a position that is seconded by Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, I don't see, it doesn't add up. I don't see how that is legitimate. But that's just my opinion. Okay, let's go back to this Okello Oryem thing. So, Museveni, Karugire, Chiriowa Chiwanuka, Rugunda, Mbabazi, Frank Mwesigye, IGP, Flaviano Nzeja, the new Chief Justice, they convened. They will soon convene to review the 187 videos and compiled information by Honorable Okello Oryem, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. They have sent him to compile all that so that they can try to figure out how they can use this against NUP and file and brand them terrorists. This is how things happen in Uganda. That prior to any, you know, and when they expect us to go to the court system to try to seek justice. But look at the behind the scenes here. Okay? They're meeting the highest representative of the court before this crime is even set to happen, or before the accused has even heard their crime or has been captured. So they're meeting over the videos or the testimony that Okello Oryem has gathered because Okello Oryem is the foreign affairs minister. So because of what is happening outside of Uganda, he's now coerced to use or be useful at this moment to try to bring sense to the Musevenis, as little as there can be. So all these videos are going to be reviewed by these people that I mentioned, and then His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu eventually will be declared wanted, and through the Interpol and all of those international services, they'll try to capture him and bring him home and try to get him to negotiate with Museveni's government and try to work with them. And this is just to show that he's in control. As you've heard, a lot of things are going to be taken over by the military, which shouldn't surprise you, because that's how they think they should work, and that's how they feel legitimate. So when that happens, you will know that he's trying to look legitimate at this time and going forward. I talked about the money not being in government, and Kaseja recommending that Museveni chop or cut some of the members, the ministers that are in government, because he has way too many. How many political advisors does Museveni have? You know, maybe 200 or whatever. None of them he listens to. He just has them so he can get them away from Noop, or have them focus on him and not on anything else. So hopefully that happens, you know, but he's supposed to be trimming a lot of his ministers to try to reduce to try to reduce expenses in government. One of the things that I'm going to share with you is the American lobbyist Joseph Slavik has a publication that he wrote about elections being very peaceful and everything going very well. Share it. Once I share it, I'm going to pass it on very soon, so take a look at it. It is something that is ridiculous. It was filed on February the 16th. It's basically praising Museveni for a peaceful election process, and how Museveni was elected legitimately, and how he won by how much. And it also reminds the Western world about the usefulness of Museveni in the region. Yes, Maureen, I agree with you. So many questions about the past political parties because they were never legitimate. Museveni owned all political parties in the past. That's why when His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu came, he couldn't believe what hit him from where. But so I've finished what I've had to share with you today. Thank you, European Union, Parliament. Thank you for all your efforts. Thank you for listening to us. I think that a lot is going to come out of this. And the fact that this causes not just action from one government, it does syndicate to the different countries. I hope that when this does take effect, it spreads very quickly and is covered very quickly. We want our president free. We want Ugandans free. We want our freedom, and we want this human rights abuse to end. More so, we want our presidency given where it should be to His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. Museveni is not the legitimate president of Uganda. He's not the elect president. He stole the election, and we are stressing the fact that we want our president, His Excellency Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, to take up his position as the newly elected president of Uganda on January 15th, 2026. I love you all. I thank you all for joining me today. I will be back tomorrow. I feel much better, and we will take it from here. Yes, Paul, there are going to be sanctions on, I spoke about that on the other part of my video, but there are going to be sanctions on everybody individually involved in human rights violations. I talked about the Global Magnitsky Act, which is going to be taken into action coming the next few days because of the conclusion of the European Parliament today. I watched the whole video, and I agree, and I apologize for, breaking this up a little bit, but in the full video, if you watch the first part, you will see that I spoke about that as well. I'm reading some contributions here. No legitimacy. No, Museveni is not our president, is not the elected president of Uganda, and we hold that position very, very, very strongly. And we will scream to the loudest of peaks out here to make sure that he's not legitimatized. The good thing about the European Union is that when Jason was speaking, he mentioned that we can't give legitimacy to Uganda, to Museveni, because he's truly not the legitimate president of Uganda. Let's keep the fight up. Let's keep things going. I'm going to share that letter that was written by Slavic, actually, Joseph Slavic, who is the lobbyist of Museveni here in the United States, in Washington, D.C. Other than that, I will be in touch with you tomorrow, and I thank you all so much for being here. Love you all. Love Uganda. I hope for peace. I love everyone there. I want it to be free. It's a lovely country. We should all be able to go back and, back and forth and live well for each other. Okay? Stay well. Joanne, good to see you. Paul, thank you. Winnie, namesake, thank you. Maureen, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, and we'll be in touch tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.